Hey guys, this will be video 4 for the how to design build a custom Explorer replica. And I wasn't planning on doing a video tonight, but I thought it'd be a good time since I got the template roughed out. Actually, not roughed out; it's actually precision finished. So we'll talk about that in a little while. I'll go into pretty extreme detail, but it's about as close to perfect as perfect can be. So I'm very happy with that. But I want to make certain that I keep in mind that there's somebody out there that's never done this before. So this video is probably going to be very rudimentary from that standpoint, because I'm going to talk about, how you go from paper, the blueprints, to I've already talked about how I took the time to, X-Acto knife and cut this out with straight edges and things like that. And then to assure that I wasn't just using scissors and risking traveling. And then after you go from your paper, then you want to make your half templates, and that's probably the most important template right there, is the half templates. Let me pause and clear my throat because I've been doing a lot of routing, and I'll be right back. Okay, anyway, once you move from this full-size print paper here, then you move to your paper template. I typically do this on construction paper, and I like using the green because a lot of times I'll also use a black border, and I'll work with what I call positive and negative space, where you just have the green behind the black, and then that way you're actually you can see your job much better. And that really works out well when you're building a custom guitar, that you don't know exactly what it is that you want or how it's going to look and all that jazz. So it helps to, actually, I think it's critical to resolve it on paper first, and then you move to your plywood. And the cool thing about once you do move to your plywood and you're ready to pull the trigger on those tools, you're about 100% confident that you love what it is that you see, whether it's a replica or whether it's a custom build and things like that. And when I had mentioned even down to the point of which side of the mark do you cut on, I typically always cut the mark away. And then that way, that guarantees that I don't risk the guitar growing on me. Because if you go from paper to template to wood and you don't make those real fine calculations, you'll end up getting off a little bit. So, and how would you do this? Because I had mentioned before, like the Flying V is really deceptive, because most people would think, oh, the Flying V or even like the Explorer, it's just a couple of straight lines and some rounded corners and stuff. Don't let them fool you, because these guitars are, I think, more difficult to build than your guitar bodies with all the compound radius curves. When you think of like the Telecaster, the Strat, the Gibson, pretty much anything. To my knowledge, the Flying V and the Explorer is the only two guitars out there that have really long, precision straight lines. And even though this line here and that line down there are not parallel, they're trapezoidal in nature. If you don't, well, you got to make sure you keep them straight. Okay, it's a given. So just try not to let your lines travel, and that way, once you get to your curves and you start blending everything together, it'll look really good. So after you have this, then you're able to, as we had our piece of plywood, we'll talk about that a little bit more in the future. But then, because the most critical part that I started when I started doing the layout is the center line. And once you define that center line, and then keep in mind this is still a 24-inch, it's a 2x2 half-inch piece of plywood. And this is a CDX, which is an exterior grade plywood. It's not waterproof, but it's water resistant for building houses. And the half-inch would be perfect for like you're decking on a roof. Okay, so it's very stable. This is going to be it's going to be a water resistant glue. I don't know if it's waterproof, but it could handle a little bit of moisture. But nonetheless, I'm going to be coming in here and sealing these edges. But getting back to my point, starting with that center line first, and then I know that once I cut this out, all I got to do is simply get that center line on, get the edge of that template there on center, and then come in here and let me get it lined up so I don't make a fool of myself and make certain that it's all where I want it. And then you simply come in with your mechanical pencil, and I usually use a kind of a heavy pencil on this, because when I'm machining all this off, I'm machining the pencil line away, so to the point where I see raw wood. And so anyway, on that note, you can see how perfectly precise my template is in relation to my actual piece of paper template there. And that should be your target. It's got to be your target. Otherwise, it'll show. So very happy with that. And then the next thing would be just pick up your jigsaw with a really nice blade. And I'm fairly confident. You could use a bandsaw as well, but I'm fairly confident with my jigsaw. I got within about a 1/16 of an inch all the way around. And then right here, it didn't matter. I could have been 1/8 of an inch off. And in this area I was about 1/8 to 3/16 of an inch off. Why? Because the next step was to come in. Hold on one second. Let me clear my throat one more time. Okay, so the next step would be to, okay, so you just took the jigsaw and you cut all this out, and we'll talk about how I use the actual fretboard that I've got finished in order to assure that this template is finished, because I want this template to be able to be picked up in the future and either set down on a piece of $300 lumber and pick up the router and pull the trigger, and I've got a finished guitar, or very close to the finished body. But and how did I assure that I pulled that off? I used my Stuart McDonald template here, because this is a precision straight edge, rather than trying to use a table saw or a jigsaw or sandpaper. I just came in and used my jet glue. Keep in mind, I got 5 straight lines. I got one right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Took me about 45 minutes to route that, and I did one at a time. And in case I forget, I did this on my table, and I had this sticking up out of the table. Okay? And the way you do this, again, this is going to be very rudimentary, but you would, if you're going to route just that one right there, you put your tape down, and you put your tape wherever you want. You know, you could look at your template and ask yourself, well, you might not want to put the tape there. Just go ahead and put it down here. Okay, and then let's say you've got your pencil line right there, and all you're going to be routing is just from this flat here to that flat there. Don't try to take it all the way. There's no sense in doing that, because that's what you're going to be using your really large 3-inch diameter oscillating sander. But then you're going to come in here, and the way I do it is I tear off some more tape, and I put tape right here and right there, but obviously on this side, and I wouldn't let the logo get in the way, but I would have tape right there, and then do just and this tape is going to be about 3 or 4 inches long, because I want to make certain that it really beds. I'm going to have 2 drops here and 2 drops there, and then I'm going to make certain that I come in and just really get this edge perfectly precise the first time. I don't want to have to do any sanding right there, other than just one small amount of blending to where I did my radius work right there. And then, simply put, I've got my routers bit set at about that depth, exactly that depth right there, just enough that the blade just barely takes off the top. don't worry about your blade getting into your template. If you're worried about that, then you need to get a better router bit. This is a perfectly flush bit, so I know I can trust it to go all the way up here, and the blade is not going to hurt the template. But you do that one, and then you tear it loose, throw the tape away. And I had to use a longer straight. This is going to be kind of funny. I actually used the fretboard because this is really, really strong wood. And I used the fretboard. I did the masking tape down here and the masking tape up there. Didn't have to put it in the middle. All I needed was just to maintain a straight edge. And then I made certain that don't dare do this kind of crap right here. Make certain that you've got plenty of leadway, because the bit is turning in that direction. Okay, it's turning, if you're looking down on it, it's turning counterclockwise. So you want to come in from up here, and you wouldn't want to risk this, because if you bump that, game over. So have a little bit of leadway there, and then that way your bearing will run in here and catch that. And I mean, it's a one pass cut, and you're through. And you make sure that you put some tape up here to give yourself like a stop. That way you don't get confused and try to eyeball it. You just know that once you get to that tape, pull away, because you can work that in later on. Okay. So just a piece of straight edge. I like using that template. Works really well. So I did all 5. And then did my blend work, and I did exactly what I said in the video yesterday. I used or last night, I used the 1.5 inch, diameter? Yeah, 1.5 inch diameter, oscillating drum sander. Did that one, and then shaped that with the 1.5 inch as well. It's 1 9/16. And blended perfectly in. And the way I routed this out here, I actually took advantage of the fact that I've got my fretboard finished. And okay, this would be the 25th fret location, or the end of the fretboard. 24, 23, 22, 21, 20, 19. Okay, so I know that 19 is where that's going to connect the guitar body. Okay, that's the guitar, and that's the guitar if it were a 24 fret. But keep in mind, it's going to get cut off right there. So that will be 24, 23. Yeah, see, this will be the 22nd fret, and then that'll be the end of the fretboard right there. It does not have a binding, so you use the full distance right there. And then what I did is I put tape here. I did 3 on this one. I put tape here, and tape on the very end. But I made certain that the tape did not overhang. And then I made certain that I found the perfect centering of this. And then I put it on, not at the 19th, I put it on at the 20th. And in other words, what that did is it gave me just a little bit more mass up here, so that when I do my routing on my Korina, I've got about a 64th of an inch that I'll be sanding off. In other words, I'm getting extremely close to the finish line with my route work. Why? Because I trust my bits and I trust my templates. If you don't trust any of that stuff, then I wouldn't recommend going that close. And I certainly wouldn't recommend going that close if this is your first guitar, because it usually doesn't work out very well. But don't be so far away from your target that you end up working yourself in a frenzy, or possibly running the risk. Let me grab it really quickly. Sorry about that. I hit the camera. I'm sure it went crazy there for a second. But the last thing you would want to do is have the body finished, gluing in the neck, and then you get up here and you get a little bit overzealous, and you sand up into this area right here, or you sand up into that area there. In other words, you went beyond that point, because you don't really recover from that on a stained grade guitar. So I took it right to the finish line over here, but I left it just a little bit fat right here, so that right there at the end, I can come in with a flat block and blend the neck. See, I'll be able to come in and blend that heel right there. This is for the flying V, but I'll be able to blend that heel to this body, and it will literally take me maybe 5 minutes to connect the neck to the body. Okay, so it's a good feeling when you can get to the point to where you're doing real precision work there at the end. So let that be your goal, to try to be real precise on everything, because the last thing you want to be doing is up here sanding and trying to work everything together, because very quickly you'll lose the design. I'm not being negative. I'm just trying to help you guys avoid mistakes that I made when I was first starting out. And I always thought, oh, I'll deal with that later. And then you forget later, and then you don't realize that, oh wow, I'm an eighth of an inch bigger than my target, and then you're having to work yourself crazy trying to blend everything together. So, all right, so put that over there. Fretboards. Well, I don't want to talk about the fretboard. I don't want to waste time. But she's finished. She's ready for. It's not finished. It's not radius. It's just tapered. It's tapered, and it's flat. So it'll get radius 12-inch radius. But in other words, it's ready to do that work. So let me check the time. 16 minutes. I'm gonna try to keep this video around 20 minutes so it doesn't take 2.5 hours for it to upload. One thing that I will talk about here a little bit is, well, I kind of already covered it, but I'll go ahead and cover this again just because I do have the template. As I had meant, a lot of times I'll mention, how to build a flying V using Stuart McDonald templates, because I bought these templates 16, 17, 18, 19. I bought these templates. Let me show you this. Let's see if that picks up. See those little score lines right there? That's the 16th fret location on a Les Paul. 24 3/4 inch scale, which is exactly what these guitars are going to be. So that would be the 17th, the 18th, and the 19th. So now I can just pick up this template, and it has a scored center line here. And even though this is for a vintage Les Paul, 16, 17, 18, 19, I can simply lay that up there. And if I wanted to really finish this template out 100%, I could jet glue tape this template to this body, and I could grab my router and I could route out the pickup locations. I could go ahead and drill through for the bridge location and the tailpiece location. Obviously can't do the three-way or any of the controls, but that would really knock out a lot of the guitar very quickly. But I like leaving my templates just like this right here, because who's to say that the next guitar I build might be a 24 fret, and then I'll be wanting to move that pickup location. Well, I'll be wanting to move everything, for the most part, unless it's a 24 3/4 inch scale. That would not change. But I might do a 25-inch scale, or I might do a 25.5 inch scale. And the reason I left this long is I could also use this. If you see, I wrote the 16th fret location right there. That's the 16th fret location for the 24 3/4. And I'm not going to cut this off. I like leaving it alone because I'm going to drill a hole in here and I can hang it on the wall. But if I wanted to just build this body and allow it to be machined so that it would receive a fender type heel, then I could then extend this a little bit and then round it over like a telly or a Strat. That way someone could do a bolt-on neck. A bolt-on neck is what I'm talking about. So don't paint yourself into a corner and cut that off short, because if you do decide later on, oh, I want to do some sort of bolt-on type configuration, you might get yourself in trouble. And I'll just leave it at that. So leave your template kind of virgin in that respect, but now that you've got this footprint, and also this will give you an idea, and let me finish what I was about to say. Now that you've got this footprint, this could be a bass guitar. This could be, an acoustic guitar. This could be a hollow body guitar. The sky's the limit. Different scales, you name it. You got your footprint, you know that you've got your neck. Okay? So it's exciting when you see it come together. and I'm going to kind of show off this plywood. And keeping in mind, this is like, I got this at Home Depot. I call it a big box because, you know, I got guys from all over the world watching the videos. I don't know if Home Depot is worldwide, but any of your, when I say big box, I'm talking about like your just handyman uh, building supply house. I can't even think what you call them. So anyway, hardware store, like a big hardware store. So that plywood is really impressive for $11. That's a steal. Okay, and I will still seal it with the CA glue, and I really won't have to do any epoxy other than that right there. And then, well, there's a little pocket right there. I was expecting to have some gaping areas in there where you had to fix it, but if it's designed to be used as roofing, a roofing for a house, it has to be held to pretty high standards, and they can't have a lot of pockets in there because it would create weak spots. Okay, check the time again. Sorry about that. I know that was probably noisy. And yeah, I don't think the camera needs to be readjusted. What are we, 21 minutes? What else should I talk about? I don't think there's a whole lot to talk about. I covered that enough to give you an idea of how I machined out the template. One thing I failed to really clarify in the last video is let me pause and get a little block of wood, and then we'll talk about how you could route out the body using this template, whether it's atop the body or on the bottom. So let me pause briefly. I'll be right back. Okay, should be able to finish in this section of the video. How am I going to do my body? First off, my body is going to be, what's the distance? It's going to be 1 11/16 inch. This is 1 7/8 inch mahogany. A lot of times that's roughly what you're working with, or, you know, about an 1/8 inch thinner than that, like 1 3/4. So you could either have the template on the bottom surface. In other words, if this were the top of the guitar, you could attach the template to the back side, and you could come in with the bearing on the bottom, and then, you know, you're running the bearing along that in other words, on a table. The table will be fixed, and it will be turning in a counterclockwise fashion. So every bit of the work that you'll be doing will be in this direction right here. Okay, I just so strongly recommend that you don't do climbing cuts on any of this, and do very shallow bites. Again, you guys are woodworkers, you know better how to use your router, but I like the idea of doing this on a table, and that way you can really keep control of everything, and then start out real slow. So you wouldn't want to start out with this, because in order to get the bearing up on the template, you're having to take enormous first bite out of the wood. That's going to get you in trouble. And that's why, like, again, as I mentioned, this is kind of rudimentary, because I'd rather just share with you, you know, how to really ease your way to the finish line. So you could run the bearing way down here and just barely kiss it off, and then start easing that bearing up, you know, on the table, and then graduate up to this one with the bearing down really low. Then you're probably fairly safe. Now, see, this one's different because this bearing is up on the top, but that was fine because I was working with such thin material. In this instance, and that's what I meant by this bearing right here. I'm going to show it again, only as a suggestion, a very strong suggestion as how not to build a guitar. You would not dare want to be trying to do that right there with the bearing on the top, and then the template on the top of the body, and you've got this wood hanging over. Even if it's just hanging over a 32nd of an inch, odds are that whole surface is going to catch, especially right there. Why right there? Because it happened to me once. The first time I got that bit about 20 years ago, I was all excited, and I tore a little guitar apart up there. it was going to be paint grade anyway, but I learned to never use that bit unless you just have to. So if you just insisted on putting the template atop the body, how would you route out this wood? Well, I would recommend fixing the body on a table and putting this in your router with a real good base and freehanding it from overhead. Now you're pushing in this direction because you're doing cutting cuts. You're not doing climbing cuts. I do climbing cuts because I know what I'm doing, and I know where I could do climbing cuts and when I have to revert back to do cutting cuts or pushing cuts. So you wouldn't dare want to load something like that up in a handheld router and come down here and think you're going to start roughing out that body in one or two passes. Get you in a lot of trouble. So again, invest in some really good bits. Work it from a table if you can. If you're going to have to work it freehand, you can, but just plan on doing about 7 or 8 passes, working your way down until you get to the point where, and this is so important. There's no sense in saying it. Just make certain that this stays way up in the collet. Don't be tempted to really drop that bit really far out of the collet and try to run it down really low. Odds are the vibration, it's going to come out or it's going to break your collet. Okay, that's why I like using the 1/2 inch. And see how I've got that buried all the way down in there? That's a very safe operation right there. But see, you could not do this one overhead. Why? Because the bearing is now on the bottom and it's just, it's not going to work. Okay, and it's also, if you, to make matters even more confusing, if you were going to try to run the router on the actual wood, you're back to that whole issue of you're trying to cut off too much. Okay, so if none of that makes sense, just rewind, watch it again, because I know the way I just explained that was very simple and very straightforward. The only thing I failed to mention was one of the reasons you might want to route it freehand and route it from the top is because you could use these little brass nails like this to come in and find choice locations where you know that, let's say there's going to be the volume controls right there. Well, then you could lay this atop your mahogany. Keep in mind, you've taken a bandsaw and you've roughed out the mahogany body within about 1/8 of an inch or so. Then you could come in, find the center line, and then you could drive these little brass nails up in areas where you know that the tenon's going to get cut out. Typically what I do, I would drive a nail here, drive a nail there. I would drive a nail where possibly where the, no, I probably would not do that, but I might step off a little bit and drive a nail back in that area, or back here, because there's going to be a really large hole drilled right there. I say that, be careful about that because you may change your mind. I would recommend driving nails through potentiometer locations, 3-way locations. If there's a 3-way location right there, then you could drive a nail through there, and then wherever that nail stuck into your mahogany, it's not going to leave an unsightly scar, or your Korina, whatever it is you're building. If you're building a paint grade guitar, it doesn't matter. You put the nails, you put a nail up here, a nail there, a nail there, and a nail there, and that baby's not going anywhere. Then crank up your freehand router and just go to town. And again, keep that up in the collet. And that's a great way to do it. And it's really fun, it's really fast, and it's really easy. And then, then you finish off with a big bit like that. Okay, and here's a little trickery for you. Once you get to the point where if you might realize that, oh wow, I don't have my bit, I just can't get that bit down deep enough to finish out the guitar. Well, you've machined the bulk of the body off. You could leave that template on there if you want, or at this point, you could flip it over. Okay, and now you could load up this bit, and you could let the bearing, this is the back of the guitar. Now just let the bearing run in the cutout footprint, and now you're using the body as the template by which to finish off that last 1/2 inch on the back. And now at that point, you will have to do that complete cut in one pass because you've got to get the bearing to the flat spot. That should make perfect sense. Okay, so don't leave 3/4 of an inch. Don't leave 7/8 of an inch. It'd be better to buy one more bit that's just 1/4 of an inch longer to get you to the point to where the only thing you're really cutting off there at the end of the game is 1/2 of an inch max. Even though that's a long bit, try not to cut more than 1/2 of an inch. And that's a lot. Okay, so I'll check the time. Wow, ended up 30 minutes. I almost want to apologize because I did not want to go that far into the video, but I think it was some good information, and I'll end on a high note. I had shown my neck template that I designed, but keep in mind I put my headstock profile on that template, but this is the headstock profile that I will be cutting. And I'm going to cut this on a piece of acrylic, just the headstock, but I like that for my own future designs and stuff, because I'm not planning on making a habit of building this guitar again. If anything, I'm going to be building my guitars with the, like the Eddie Van Halen type headstock on it. So, but this guitar is going to get the traditional headstock. So if you got any questions or comments, let me know, and I'll try to get back with you as soon as I can. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks. Hey guys, I forgot to cover something that's critically important. So let's fire this back up for just a brief moment. And when I was mentioning going from the full body template on paper to the paper template in half form, like an upper bout and a lower bout, I didn't clarify why I like to do that. It's not just to make the template. It is now so that I can take this template and I can go to my lumber supply house and I can lay this on a board rather than having to measure the board and try to find a board that's 30 inches wide or 20 inches long, whatever. I can now take this, and before I even go to my lumber supply house, I can start engineering what it is that I'm building. And if I find out that the guy's got a 10-inch wide board that's long, then I can build my Explorer out of that right there. I'm just grabbing a number out of the air. I don't know if that's accurate because I haven't measured it. But if you were to cut that out of a board that's about 36 inches long, whatever's going on in the annular rings, this is going to come down here and become a part of the guitar. And whatever's going on with the growth rings, it's going to be very, very similar, if not virtually identical. So keep in mind that if you do this right here, okay, if you rough that out of your lumber that was really long, and maybe it was only this width right here, and you're thinking, oh, it's just not wide enough. Well, look at all this wood that you've got down here. That can be straight lined and moved up here and fit in. Why? Because it's the identical quarter or a plain sewn, or at least it's so similar that the color and the grain orientation, the annular ring orientation, looking at it from the end is going to look really incredible. And when you take this rough out right here, when you look at it from the end, it's gonna be the closest thing that you can get to it looking like it is a book matched body. And if I'm over your head, I'm sorry, I'm just over your head. But you woodworker guys out there know the importance. If you could get this wood really thick, that would be book matched. But understand that if you rough out your lumber right there, that looks so close to book matched, especially from the end, and even the grain orientation from the top looks pretty good. It's kind of a cowboy's way of creating a faux book matched guitar body. Okay, so appreciate you checking in, and sorry I didn't cover that earlier, but it's really important that you think along those lines, because you don't have to spend an enormous amount of money on a really large board, especially when you get into this realm right here. This is such a big platform. You're going to have to figure ways to build that guitar that is as beautiful as possible, but also that is reason within reason as far as your budget goes. Because if you could save 200 or 300 bucks on your wood, hey man, that'll pay for most of your pickups and possibly some vintage parts as well. So again, I appreciate you guys checking in, and I'll see you in the next video. I have no idea what the next video will be because I'm still waiting on wood to come in, and it won't be here till next Tuesday. So there might be a bit of a lull all weekend. So otherwise, thanks again. See you in the next video.